any teachers in my kids' lives right now. They can't be. Because if they are, we're not preparing my kids for this, which is where they're going to live. And if this represents every single tool that's available, social media and creation tool and whatever else, you know, constructionist tool that's out there, then welcome to school. And that slide is blank on purpose. Because in many places, we just cut all that stuff out. We say, we don't know what that is, we're going to stick to PowerPoint. We're going to stick to Microsoft Office, Photoshop, the things that we know, the things that we trust. Now, that probably is unfair in the sense that there are some tools now that more and more people are beginning to use. More in schools are blogging, they're doing some things, but you get my point, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff in this world right now that we're not even considering when it comes to school. But now here's the deal. If we know that kids have access to this, and to this, and to that, that should seriously confuse us. Seriously confuse us. Because that is a much different world from the ones that we are basically built on. And yet we're not really confused by this. This is not something that we're really thinking about very much at all. What literacies and mindsets do our kids need to learn deeply in this world? Are they different from what's in our face-to-face world? I would argue they are. They are very different. That's a question that we have to ask. What does it mean to be educated now? Are we going to say, really, that all the powerful informal learning that we can do in this environment is no good because there's not a credit attached to it? Are we really going to say that? Because if we're really going to say that, that's a huge problem right now. That's a huge problem. There are people learning deeply, informally, in ways that, in spaces that don't look anything like the traditional institution. And we're going to say, no, it doesn't count. Really? That should confuse us. What is the role of school now? What is the role? I actually have a fourth book. It's called Why School? It's $1.99 on Kindle. It's cheap, easy, 50 pages. It asks that question. Why this place? Why do we need this place? And I think there's an answer to it. I absolutely think there's an answer to it. But it's a different answer from the one that we had before. What is the role of the teacher? What's your role? Is your role more now of a connector, where you're modeling for kids connections and networks and learning in these spaces for some part of the day, at least? And finally, how does our vision need to change? Now, I'm going to give you an example of a school district that decided to buy lots of technology, but never thought about what it meant to have every kid with access, and that is the Los Angeles Unified School District, which just spent $1 billion with a B dollars to give an iPad to every child, which in short order, many of those kids took home and hacked, started downloading music, started programming things they weren't supposed to program, to the point where the LAUSD now is taking back all of the iPads that they handed out. And I would suggest to you, it's because they weren't confused enough. They did not think hard enough. They thought, we will get iPads to every kid and we will deliver our curriculum digitally, and everything will be wonderful. What they didn't get was, no, that's not what happens. Giving kids, every child, access absolutely changes what you have to do in classrooms. Absolutely changes the vision that you have. If you're thinking of going one-to-one, or if you have a one-to-one, and your vision isn't changing, stop the rollout. I'm just telling you right now, you're going to waste a lot of money on technology that isn't going to change anything at all. What LAUSD didn't know is that learning is now globally networked. This is my LinkedIn graph. I'm connected in really interesting and powerful ways to hundreds of people, if not thousands of people around the world. And I want my kids to have a graph like that at some point in their lives. And I know that a lot of those people are strangers. I get it. So I'm going to say something and then take a sip of water, because there'll be dead silence and I'll have a moment to do that. I want my children to be found by strangers on the internet. I sincerely do. The idea that my kids are not going to learn with strangers every day for the rest of their lives is ridiculous. They are. The question becomes, can we teach them to find the good strangers, to discern the good strangers from the bad strangers? Can we help them become literate in these networks? And I'll tell you why it's important as well for them. I'm going to skip ahead just briefly here. Why it's important for them to be in these networks. I have a friend who started a business down in San Francisco. The first 5 people he hired, an amazing team of people. An amazing team of people. I asked him, I said, Rob, how did you find those people? And he goes, I stalked them online. Which means, if you don't have a presence online, you're not findable. You're not stalkable. You are limiting your opportunities right now. So my kids need to understand this. They need to be a part of this. And it's different, because many of us don't feel comfortable with that at all. How many of you right now could I Google your full names and see the best thinking, the best work that you've done in your classrooms or in your work? Learning is continual. Twitter is the #1 professional development tool in my network. And some of you will scoff at that. I'm telling you, Twitter works if you're following the right people. I follow about 150 smart, brilliant people and entities that on a regular basis bring me all sorts of really good information, relevant information, and who I engage with on a regular basis in conversations. If you're following Miley Cyrus on Twitter, it's not going to be that great. You're not going to understand why it's a learning tool. And this is Jane Hart in the UK, the top learning tool of 2012, Twitter. The top learning tool in 2012 is Twitter, and I will guarantee you the top learning tool in this poll in 2013 will be Twitter. So you think, well, Twitter, you're kidding, right? Twitter is a powerful way to connect and to network and to get information. Learning is creative and authentic. You know who these guys are? I can't believe how much Ashton Kutcher actually looks like Steve Jobs. Isn't that wild? I mean, you know. Here's the first Apple computer. Does it look like it was hacked in a garage? Well, yeah, it was hacked in a garage, pretty much. But the whole maker thing now, learning is creation now. If we're not building things and making things that are real, authentic, and have value in the world, why not? Why not? And some schools are beginning to get this. St. Matthew's Parish School, which is down in California, has a maker space. Making has become a part of their curriculum. They have kids designing things and creating things with technology every single day. And they are amazing things that kids are doing with all sorts of really cool technologies, Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and these little circuit boards now that are changing the way that we can help kids problem solve and think. These kids are smiling, but they fail every day over and over and over again. They fail every day because they're trying to work out an answer to a problem. They're trying to create something that hasn't been created before. And if you're not failing in that process, why not? And if you're not learning in that process, you are learning in that process. We don't let kids fail enough in school. And when they do fail, it's a bad thing. But if we're making things, if we're solving problems, if we're creating things, that becomes really, really different. And oh, by the way, MIT has now said that part of their application is specifically for kids who are makers. That if they're making things and putting them into the world, they want to know about that as a part of their application. How cool is that? They are valuing the thought process, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the collaboration, the computing skills that kids are developing in the process of doing that, because MIT understands those are prerequisites for success in learning and in the world right now. School is everywhere. Khan Academy, anyone? I mean, I'm sure many of you use Khan, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not in any way dissing Khan, but Khan's pretty interesting in that you can take math and science and the humanities are coming, the Shakespeare courses are almost here. And basically, you know, they revamped this whole site, so now you get badges for the work that you do. You pass all the tests in algebra, you get the algebra badge. And I went in there the other day, and here's my skills progress in math. I'm not doing really well. I still have to learn how to add, you know, double numbers and things. But the point is, think about this as self-organized learning. If I want to learn math, I can go to Khan. And again, if the object of learning math is to pass a test that says I've learned it, here we go. I can pass the test. Going to Khan. My daughter passed physics as a freshman because of Khan Academy. Because of Khan. And basically, so, you know, if that's what it's about, and here's the thing about Khan, though, a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. That's their mission statement. A free, listen, read that again. A free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And I wonder, what if he's right? Now, we have to define something in that mission statement, don't we? What is world-class? Right? That's the variable here. Because we can sit down and we can define world-class, and that's going to be different. No two people are probably going to agree on what world-class is. But don't miss the point. Don't miss the point. If the object of an education is to pass the tests in certain subject areas, to get the badges, to accumulate that type of knowledge, he may be right. He may be right. Now again, what is the value of this place then? And there's huge value. But is it the same as this? I don't know. We have to have that conversation. DragonBox, by the way, just to prove the point, any of you use DragonBox? Know what it is? A couple people? So basically, if you have young kids, this is an app for the iPad. You put them on the iPad, and basically, if they're pulling one thing from this side of the screen, they have to pull one thing from this side of the screen. They add something over here. They have to add something over here. They're learning algebraic concepts, even in kindergarten. What does a middle school algebra teacher do if kindergartners can start learning to solve equations within a couple of hours? Who says that kids can't learn algebra until 8th grade? Where is that rule written? Right? In a world of abundance, why is that like that? Why can't we start teaching kids or having kids learn concepts like this in the context of the curriculum or in context of other things they love to do? You know, here's another shift that's happening, and this is a really big one. Up until this point, basically in this country at least, there's been one path to a middle-class existence. If you want to pretty much guarantee a middle-class existence in this country, you know what you do, right? You get a college degree. And that's exactly what my mom thought on my graduation day from Ohio University in 1990, when she basically was looking at me, and you cannot put an ounce more pride into that woman's body at that moment. She was a Swedish immigrant off the boat right after World War II. She never went to college. She worked as a manager at Holiday Inn. My mom and dad got divorced when I was really young. We ate a lot of French's instant mashed potatoes, if you get my drift, with ketchup to make them sweet potatoes. That's always a good trick. And basically, she kept saying when I was growing up, Willie, you're going to college. And I was like, okay, Mom, that's really great, but you know, how are we going to do that? She goes, I don't know how we're going to do it, but you are going to college. Because my mother was convinced if I went to college and got the degree that I would be okay. And we made it happen, and I got the degree. And so the other thing that she's feeling right there is relief. Relief. Because I was going to be okay. And she was right. She was right. I had the degree, I got a job as a journalist, I went back to school, I started my career as a teacher. She was right. That degree really meant something. Now, back then, college was $4,500, full room and board tuition, the whole deal at Ohio University, out-of-state tuition. Today, I own 2 teenagers, and I'm looking at the next 8 years going, this is a little bit of a different reality. I have already told my kids I will not pay for grade 13. I will not pay for grade 13. Take a year off. This is not a race. There's no reason for you to go into college if you don't know what you want to pursue or if you don't have a real passion for it, because 52% of kids who graduated from college last year are either unemployed or underemployed right now. 52%. So the idea that a college education is a ticket to the middle class is not necessarily the case any longer. And you know as well as I that less than 40% of people in this country have a college education. So if we are saying that that's the only ticket to a middle class existence, we are basically cutting out 60% of people in this country like that. That's not a good thing either. So basically, you know, you read these stories all the time. You know some of these people. I have a niece who's going to graduate from Rutgers in January with a lot of debt and no job. No job. And the reason that I think we failed her is not because we haven't prepared her for a job, but because we haven't prepared her to problem solve her way out of not having a job. That's the problem. She is loaded with content and knowledge, has very little idea of what to do in that situation. I love her to death, and we're trying, but she doesn't understand how to problem solve her way out of it. And not that it's easy, and that a lot of kids are maybe unable to do that. But here's the deal, here's the place we find ourselves in now. The price of an education has gone up, the price of information now, almost zero. Almost zero. I can get news in thousands of different places. New York Times wants me to pay after 10 articles every month. And we can talk about the ethics of what I do here, but now I have 6 browsers on my machine, so I get 60 free articles. You're applauding that? Many of you are taking notes on that. and are downloading Firefox as we speak. But so the question is, in a world of abundance, how does that change? Now, I'm not saying that just because we have access to information makes us educated. Not at all. I'm not saying that. I know at least 3 people who could probably win $100 million on Jeopardy, but can't hold a conversation around what's happening in the world. You know what I'm saying, right? They are storehouses of trivia and information, but really can't synthesize it or make any sense of it. But here's the deal, and welcome to it. Big things happen when you have a gap of price of college and price of information. Oops. And so what happens is now all of a sudden, and basically what is happening now are these things called MOOCs. How many of you know what a MOOC is? Okay. And again, with all due respect, and please take this in the spirit that it's given, if you don't know what a MOOC is, a free, massively open online course, you haven't been paying attention. You haven't been keeping up on what's happening in education. We need to keep up as educators on what these changes are. Free, massively open online courses. Schools from around the world now are offering really interesting courses for free online for anyone to take, any way they want. Professors are videotaping their, they're not even taping, they're recording, taping, so 20th century, right? They're recording their lectures, putting them up, creating spaces of community, putting the course materials online, and letting people learn if they like. And so you get all these types of courses. I know you can't see these, but these are the ones that started yesterday through the end of this month. If you want to take a course in the analysis of a complex kind from Wesleyan University, or creating site-specific dance and performance works from Cal Arts, or any other, if you just have a passion or an interest in these things, you can take these courses, and you can learn. Anyone in this room have taken a MOOC? All right, so a number of you have already, right? And there are varying success stories around this stuff, okay? Don't get me wrong. And at the end of the day, for a lot of these, there is a test that you can take, and if you pass the test, you get a certificate. And oh, by the way, in California, they started saying, well, why don't we give full college credit to people who take these courses and pass the test for free? Well, $150 handling fee, but you get the idea. You get the idea. A college credit for basically nothing. So they offered that up, and a whole bunch of people were taking these courses and passing the test and getting the certificate and not asking for the credit. And they were like, well, what's going on? Why aren't people asking for the credit? And what they found out was people didn't care about the credit. They didn't really care about the credit. What they wanted was the learning. And they put these certificates up on their bios, and they put these, that they were learning in these places, and they were adding that learning to the things that they were doing in their work and whatever else. Here's EduPunk's Atlas, if you want to go look at all the places that you can go to get free types of learning experiences, just to upskill around the things you care about and have a passion for, credit, no credit, for free, pretty much. That's a pretty interesting world that we live in right now, where I can pursue things of depth and meaning in some interesting spaces that may or may not be as effective as face-to-face, but for many people, especially in the developing world, this is a really cool thing. There are lots of kids, you read stories about this all the time. There was one Time magazine, a girl in Pakistan, 12-year-old, who passed a physics course at Stanford in a MOOC, who had never had a chance to have that type of opportunity before. And so what about the credits? Who cares? Because what's happening now is, it's not, this is Tony Wagner from Harvard, it's not so much what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. In a transparent world, in that network, when my friend Rob is looking for people to work in his company, he's not looking so much at, he's looking a little bit, but not so much at what the education is, he's looking at, what can you do? You got a degree, but that doesn't really mean much. What can you do with that degree? And so now Mozilla is talking about, well, what about badges? What about the idea that there's all sorts of informal learning that people are doing in these more informal spaces that deserve to be, in some way, given credit or to be recognized? And if Mozilla can come up with a reputable way of assigning badges, you're going to have a whole bunch of people walking around with badge backpacks, that's what they're being called, without degrees, but that will have a very high level of employability because of the skills that they have, and they will have developed that employability for much less cost than spending 200 grand going to a 4-year institution and running up a whole bunch of debt. Now that is not in our narrative, I get it. That is not in our history. There's not a person in this room that doesn't have a college degree, I would bet. But my kids, my grandkids, I'm not sure that that's going to be the only path for them. I really think there are going to be lots of different paths for them, and basically they are self-organized paths. If we're not developing kids as learners who can take advantage of the self-organized possibilities that are available to them out there, why not? The kids who have those capabilities, who have those literacies, who have those mindsets and dispositions to take advantage of all the great stuff that's possible to learn on their own, they're going to win. They're absolutely going to win. And I hate to set it up like a competition, but in the end of the day, that's really what it is. They're going to get the best jobs. They're going to be the ones who are going to be more employable than the kids who can't do that. And if you think it's happening now, think about the kids in your kindergarten and first grade classes. I mean, just seriously think what it's going to be like 12 years from now. And how are you preparing those kids to be self-organized, to be self organized, problem solvers, critical thinkers, makers, people who can go out and flourish in a world of abundance where they can take advantage of all sorts of opportunities to learn that exist outside the walls. How are you preparing them for that? So, last but not least, I'm going to do this really fast. The future of work is obviously more unpredictable now. Here's the scariest quote in this presentation. If you're talking 100 years, there's no doubt in my mind, all the jobs will be gone, even the creative ones. And what he's saying here is not that all the work will be gone, but the jobs will be gone. And it's already starting to happen. Technology is taking over a lot of jobs. And I love this one. Daddy, what was a truck driver? These are big Caterpillar trucks that don't have drivers. Google has driverless cars in California right now. A friend of mine, Audrey, actually rode in a driverless car from Google down the Santa Monica freeway. Scared the hell out of Audrey. But she's okay. So what happens then? Well, so I go into a lot of coffee shops in the places that I travel. Invariably, I see lots of people that's basically their home office, where they're set up with their laptops and they're freelancing. They are doing work for people anytime, anywhere. I mean, if you want to get a sense of this, go to Elance or Odesk. Just take 15 minutes and go to one of these sites and look at the types of people that are out there putting their skills and everything else out there. And these guys think that by 2020, half of the people in this country will be independent contractors, consultants, or freelancers. Think about that, half. And let's say they're wrong by, I don't know, a fair amount. Let's say it's a third. Let's say it's a quarter. Do you not think that we have to prepare kids a little differently for that kind of work environment than the one that basically says you're going to get a job and you're going to be in that job for the rest of your lives? And you've heard the Bureau of Labor statistics, 15 careers is going to be the average for kids who are entering the workforce today. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I can tell you that more and more people are going to be freelancing and doing their work in a self-organized way. So, to kind of bring this all together, here we are. This is the world at our doorstep. These are kids in Peru who have been given the one laptop per child. I love this picture. But it represents this ubiquitously connected world that we are entering that is filled by people, 5 billion people, 5 billion learners. These kids especially are highly motivated to use their connections and their access to learn. Highly, highly motivated. And they will be creating and they will be connecting in ways that we don't understand. And that includes the kids in your schools right now. They are going to be using technology in ways that we don't understand. You realize, don't you, that this that you have in your pocket or your purse or your backpack is the worst technology you will ever have. It is the worst piece of technology you will ever own. And to try to think about what that piece of technology is going to be in 5 years, 10 years, boggles the mind. Boggles the mind when you think about it. And these guys are going to change the world. And they're not going to put up with this. They're not going to put up with that. If they have access to this, you really think they're going to be okay with that? And they're not going to put up with this. They're not going to put up with people who are telling them you can only learn with the people in your face-to-face world. If they have access to this, they're going to find the teachers who they can learn with when they need to learn. They're going to have to find the people who can help them pursue their interests and passions in ways that we are limited in our face-to-face world. Our kids need us to take advantage of this. But to do that, we have to be different. You have to be different. You are still and will still be important people in my kids' lives. Please don't hear me saying anything different than that. But the role that you play in my kids' lives and the role that you play in the kids in your classroom's lives has to be a little bit different right now. They don't have a lot of adult models for this. They don't know really what this looks like except when they come home and try to hack it out themselves. And my point is, if they knew what they were doing with this, oh my goodness, how cool would that be? How cool would that be if they fully understood the potentials and the opportunities that are available to them at this moment? So we need to be different. We need to move away from this focus on content and knowledge and just kind of getting through the curriculum to these other C's. And this is kind of the 7 C's, and there are other C's, and there are other words, but you get the point. Because it's not what you know anymore. It's what can you do with it. What can you do with it? How can you make sense of the world and contribute to the world based on what you know? And so the big question for me is right now, how can you as educators make decisions about all this stuff that happens in your kids' lives in school if you don't have a context for what a connected, computing, ubiquitously networked world looks like in your own practice? I think that is a fair question to ask of you right now. I think it's a fair question to ask. How can you make decisions that are relevant for the future of the kids in your classrooms if you have no practice around what this looks like in your own life? I think that's a fair question. And I think that that's one that we each have to grapple with right now. We each have to try to figure it out because, sorry, it's not going away. It's not going away. So where do we start? We start being learners first and teachers second. And I really sincerely mean that. I want my kids to be surrounded by adults who are passionate learners, who are modeling learning all the time. I ask kids all the time when I go to schools, I say, how smart are your teachers? And they have an answer like that. And you can go to ratemyteachers.com and see what they think of you in that sense. But then I ask them, how do your teachers learn? And they really don't have a clue. They say, well, what do you mean? I say, well, how do they learn? What do they look like as learners? And I go, well, I guess they come to conferences and they read books. They don't see us as learners. They see us as teachers. And on some level, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But on another level, if that's the only way they see us now, that's a problem. They need to see us as learners, people who are pursuing our own passions, our own interests, making interesting, valuable, authentic, beautiful, meaningful work that lives in the world and has purpose that can change the world. Because if they have us as models for that, then they can fly in that environment without question. So the question is, how are you changing? What important, authentic work have you created with computers and shared with the world? And are you connected to other learners from around the world around your passions? Fair questions to ask, I think, right now, of each of us as educators. And what if professional development looked less like this? Oh, the irony of this picture, right? What if it looked less like this and more like this? So this is a loop of a teacher who at a 2-day kind of constructing modern knowledge event made this t-shirt out of Arduino and Raspberry Pi devices to show that when you press on something on the shirt, it shows the digestive tract. You get the idea, right? And you look at that and you kind of go, well, that's kind of silly. But you know what he learned in the process of making that shirt, don't you? How to learn in a connected, computing-filled, technology-filled world. He failed over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, he was able to create that. And it speaks to this, that in times of change in which we are we are in one right now, in times of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will be beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists. And that is where we are right now. I really want to thank you for your time this morning. I hope that was helpful, and I hope you can see it.